This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And happy Saturday to everyone. Today is February 24th, 2024, and this is the Dr. Sem Yankees Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are here every single Saturday, like the letter carriers, like the mailmen of old. Rain or snow or sleet or whatever they say, nothing can stop us from getting this program to you every Saturday at 7 a.m. Let's make today a great day. How do you make your day great? The easiest way is to appreciate all the good that's around you, because if you take the time to notice the good, your day almost can't be anything other than great, because there's always good. In the darkest winter, there's a sign of spring. Now, some people say it's bad. Right now, things in my life are bad. They couldn't get worse. I can't find any good. And when I hear that, I implore you to search for the good, to look deep, or to make it yourself. If you make good yourself, then there's good, and you can't help but notice it. And then if you notice it, that will help you make today a great day. Now, sometimes things aren't good even for me, because we are all human. And this week, we're sad in my family because of a terrible loss in our family. And I had some plans for the program, but I'm going to change them around a little bit. Originally, for this show, we were going to interview the great author David Ostrowski, who I've come to know various ways in the author world. And he has a brand new book out, The Story of Roberto Alomar. And I'm about halfway through it. It's phenomenal. It's an outstanding book. And in the first time I sat down to read the book, and I'm not even exaggerating, it's so well written, it's so compelling, that I read the first 124 pages in my first sitting. Now, I'm a quick reader, but I'm not that quick. You have to have something that's really, really good to capture me that quickly. But the book did. Roberto Alomar, of course, is one of the most controversial players in the last number of decades in baseball. We all know what happened. If you don't, there was a game. He was called out on strikes, and he spat on the home plate umpire, John Hirschbeck, as I recall. Again, I never have the notes right in front of me on my computer screen, because I feel that takes away the interaction I have with you by looking things up and having my attention diverted elsewhere. But I'm certain it's John Hirschbeck, and Roberto Alomar spit on him. I don't think there's ever been a situation in baseball history where a player has spit on an umpire. And for that, Roberto Alomar received unbelievably and justified negative reactions from players, from umpires, from the media, from the fans, from really the entire baseball community. And so when David reached out to me and said, I wrote the autobiography, or the biography, I guess it's not an autobiography. When I wrote the story of Roberto Alomar, would you like to read the book and review it? And then I offered for him to come on this show. Part of me thought, wow, that's an interesting person to write a story about and to invest hundreds of hours. You know, when you write a book, it takes an unbelievable unbelievably amount of time to write the book and to go through the process of choosing the right word. Richard Nixon, who was a prolific author, especially in his retirement after he left the White House, wrote many, many books. And I remember reading, I was in college at the time, visions someday of being an author, of being able to write books that other people I've never known and will never know who would read my stuff. That was a dream. And I remember being a little bit frightened because in a book that Richard Nixon wrote, I believe it was the one titled In the Arena, but I can't be certain. But in that book, I believe it's that book, he wrote, when you write a book, it's a long process. And there are times you obsess over, should I use there or that or the? And as someone who figured that or hoped that one day he would be an author, that scared me to death. Like, I'm having a hard time writing a 5-page term paper or I guess a 5-pager you always got through. But like if the teacher said, you've got to have a 15-page paper by next week or in 3 weeks, and you had to crank it out and come up with the material and the big thoughts and to write a 15-page paper, I'm thinking, how could I ever write a book if it takes that much thought and effort to pick one word? So I thought for David Ostrowski to invest that kind of time and effort and energy on a player who spat on an umpire, and I thought that's a tough one. But of course I said yes. I'm always interested in supporting my friends and supporting other authors. And quite honestly, it's also a compelling read. Like, what is the truth behind that incident? What happened to lead up to that incident? Who was Roberto Alomar before that happened? And what happened after? And so next week, it's my hope. I've asked him to postpone our meeting for what's going to be later today when I'm recording this. Hopefully next week we have the interview with David Ostrowski, and he can tell us all about Roberto Alomar and that whole situation. And really, I'm up to the spitting incident in the book. It's about at page 124. So I'm very compelled, and I'm looking forward to reading the second half of the book and to see what happens afterwards. But I'm telling you, it's a compelling read. And the big takeaway I have just at this point is, up until that instant, Roberto Alomar was a pretty quiet guy, pretty good teammate, and a heck of a baseball player. Of course, as Yankee fans, we know that his father, Sandy Alomar, toward the end of his own career, played second base for the Yankees, was on the second Yankees in 1976 when they finally made it back to the World Series. Many people may not know this, but it was Sandy Alomar Sr., not the catcher, Sandy Alomar Sr., who was on deck when Chris Chambliss hit the game-winning home run off Mark Littell to propel the Yankees into the World Series. So again, I'm hoping to have that. Spring training is now underway. In Yankee land, things look pretty good. They really do. Things are looking good for the Yankees. EJ Fagan and I talked about this on the Start Spreading the News podcast on Monday night at 9 p.m. last Monday night, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again this coming Monday night, that things seem to be falling right in line for the Yankees, at least as spring training starts. There seems to be, and I'll admit that because of family circumstances, I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to the Yankees. They're sort of on the ancillary over here. I'll tell you another story about the only other time, or one of the only other times, the Yankees were sort of on the ancillary of my life. Maybe I'll get to that today, maybe another day. But it seems like the players have this focus, this determination to play well, to play hard, to come to camp in shape, to show that last year was an aberration, that last year was a disaster. And the only way to prove that, about this before, and I have an article that has been on the shelf for Start Spreading the News since December. I was convinced in December after the Yankees got Juan Soto that they were going to do whatever it took to get I can't think of his name, the pitcher from Japan who went to the Dodgers. And I had an article saying, I don't care now if the Yankees win the World Series or not. And that would make everybody surprised, because that's what I keep talking about. It's been too long since the Yankees have been to, and it's been too long since the Yankees have won a World Series. But I have an article on hold. It's on ice. It's waiting, that I was going to run to say, basically, all I want is for the Yankees. All I want is for the Yankees to go all in, to not put up any barriers, to say we are putting the best possible team on the field, the team that we feel will be most competitive. And they haven't done that for a long time. And I think I've been very clear about this. The Yankees haven't necessarily been cheap. They always have one of the highest payrolls. They spend their money, but they don't spend it wisely. They give gazillions of dollars to Josh Donaldson to play third base when better options were available. They pass on generational talents like Bryce Harper when they were available. And we don't have to rehash all that, but there's never been the sense that the Yankees have gone all in. There's always been something holding them back. And even this year, even right now, there's a sense the Yankees could still use a starting pitcher. There's a sense that the Yankees don't have third base figured out. There's the sense that they've never truly addressed having a leadoff hitter, a quality leadoff hitter to hit in front of Soto and Judge and all that. It's that same kind of thinking that has me looking at the Yankees right now in spring training, a week in or so. They're in camp. They seem to be working hard. They seem to be giving it their very best. They seem to be in great shape. They seem to be angry about last year, and they seem to have this focus and determination to win and win big. And that, again, is all I can ask for, right? Like, I want the Yankee players to be all in. I want them to be fired up to play their best baseball every day. And quite frankly, I haven't seen that necessarily a lot these last numbers of years. We see loafing being accepted. We see players being sat down when they're in hot streaks. We see like the focus being on things other than playing good, hard, fundamentally strong baseball. And that's frustrating. Very frustrating. And so because of that, it's been less fun to be a Yankees fan these last number of years. It doesn't seem like the owner is all in. The GM hasn't gotten the players the Yankees need to get. And the on-field product hasn't been terrific. Now, I thought if they were able to sign the big Japanese pitcher whose name escapes me this morning and have Juan Soto, that's going all in, no doubt. And then I was going to write, this is all I can ask. I can't ask for the result. You must win the World Series. That's ridiculous. But I can ask that you do everything you can to make the team the favorites to win the World Series. Again, we're not talking about the Seattle Mariners or the Detroit Tigers or the Kansas City Royals or the Oakland, soon-to-be Las Vegas A's or the Pittsburgh Pirates. We're talking about the Yankees, a team whose whole marketing, whose whole aura is about winning. They need to win. That's their whole thing. That's what makes the Yankees, and not the Mets. And not even the Red Sox or the Orioles or the Dodgers. Is the Yankees win, or they're supposed to, always. They're always supposed to be the favorites. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And so if the players come out and they have this aura like we are going to give this thing everything we have, again, at least at the player perspective on that level, that's all we can ask for. If that's what we get, we're going to see compelling baseball all summer long and hopefully long into the autumn. And that should make it a great season. Now, those of you who know me outside of this Yankee stuff, I think would agree that I'm pretty optimistic. I usually look to the good. I'm always happy. People asked me for years. I was a public school teacher, vice principal, and principal for 32 years. They say, we've never seen you not happy. We've never seen you angry. We've never seen you without a smile on your face. How do you stay so upbeat? That's who I am. But it's funny that when I talk about the Yankees, I'm often the opposite of upbeat. And everything else about my life is positive often, except for when I talk about the Yankees. And when it's to the Yankees, I keep finding all the things that they do wrong. But for today, since there's enough negativity in my world right now and enough sadness and grieving, what I want to do is I want to talk about what I am optimistic about for the Yankees for the 2024 season. But first, the Start Spreading the News podcast and the Dr. Sem Yankees Show are brought to you by Artemisia Publishing. Artemisia Publishing is a small independent publisher bringing quality books from quality authors that will inform, educate, and entertain readers of all ages. They've, of course, published The Least Among Them, written by me. They've published Lincoln Mitchell's book about the 100 most influential baseball players of all time. They've published Roy White's autobiography, written with me, From Compton to the Bronx. And they published my wonderful novel, Scattering the Ashes. So those are just 4 of their great books. Also, the Bat Boy series, the story that Rob Skeed wrote about Johnny Vandermeer. It's a middle grade children's book or a middle grade book for older kids. It's phenomenal. And then they have thousands, maybe it's probably hundreds, but tons of other great books that they have published that are run the gamut: fiction, science fiction, fantasy. Just go to their website, Artemisia Publishing. They're fantastic. Anyway, so let's look at the optimist. What can I be optimistic about with the Yankees for 2024? I believe that Carlos Rodon is going to have a big year. I'm very optimistic that Carlos Rodon is going to turn this thing around. He's a human being, right? That's the other thing. I take a quick step back about Roberto Alomar. You know, in the media, when we write in the papers and in magazines and on TV and just in our lives, we often ascribe to people various characteristics. And if you do something bad, like Roberto Alomar did, you're then a bad guy forever. Now, again, I haven't read the whole book, so I don't know all the story behind the spitting. But I don't think any of us would ever want to be judged by our worst moment. Usually our worst moments are things that take place, way out of the public spotlight, not on TV in front of millions of baseball fans watching a game, and then not replayed over and over on ESPN 4 gazillion times. Usually our worst moments are something that we do or something that we say that hurts a person or a couple of people that we then apologize for and that we then try to fix or whatever. We've all made mistakes. We've all made bad decisions. We make a bad decision at work, then we have to fix it or whatever. Usually we don't make our bad decisions in front of millions of people, but we're complex. We're human beings, right? There's more to us than we can, than anyone knows, than anyone, even everyone, right? So I think sometimes we need to find the ways to give people the benefit of the doubt. And last year we were all down on Carlos Rodon. but he's a human being, and he's got pride, and he's got determination, and he doesn't want to be considered a terrible Yankee or a terrible baseball player or a free agent bust or an embarrassment. No, no, no. He wants to do well. He wants to do great. And I sense he's worked real hard to get to that point where he will, because he has the talent. I think he's going to have a big year. I think Gleyber Torres is going to have a big year. And if you asked me 6 months ago, I would have said I wouldn't extend him. Let him have his great year and let the Yankees move on and figure out second base with somebody else. But more and more, I'm coming to the realization or the idea that Gleyber Torres is going to have a big year, and the Yankees should re-sign him and lock him up to a reasonably long-term deal. We'll get to that bridge when we get to it. In my heart of hearts, I don't think DJ LeMahieu is going to have a big year. But the optimistic side of me, and we're staying optimistic today, the optimistic side of me says that everyone else who's writing that his bat is back, that he's finally healthy, that he's ready to play 5 or 6 days rather than 7 a week, that he's going to be the spark plug to the offense. Part of me is starting to buy into that. I don't know why, because it goes against my gut instinct, but I'm starting to become more and more optimistic about DJ LeMahieu. I'll tell you who I'm very optimistic about. It's an outfielder. And his name is Trent Grisham. You know, somehow I think he's a better hitter than his batting average has shown the last couple of years. Mariano Duncan came to the Yankees in 1996. He wasn't a great hitter, yet he hit .340 that year. It was like one magical year. That's happened billions of times. I'm exaggerating, of course, but that's happened billions of times in baseball. And I think maybe, just maybe, Trent Grisham is going to be the guy to have that breakout year and really be something special. My hope is he does so well that he becomes the starting center fielder. I don't want Aaron Judge out there, and we're staying optimistic, so we're not going to talk about that. But I have a sense Trent Grisham is going to be a better ball player than anybody even hopes for in their wildest imaginations, that he's going to exceed our wildest imaginations. And maybe he hits 290 or 310 or something like that. I just see it happening. It's happened before with players who shouldn't have big batting averages, who just put it all together one year, playing for a championship team. And I think that may happen with Trent Grisham. I think Alex Verdugo is also going to have a big year. I think that was a smart pickup by Brian Cashman. I think Juan Soto is going to have a big year. I'm optimistic about Aaron Judge having a great year because he's a great player, but I am worried about him playing center field. So I think those are the guys who I'm most optimistic about, really exceeding expectations, not just meeting, but exceeding. So Judge will probably meet expectations. You know, when you're Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig or Mickey Mantle or Aaron Judge, Mariano Rivera, or whatever, it's pretty hard to exceed expectations. It's pretty hard to be greater than the best. So if Aaron Judge just meets expectations, that's pretty good. And I thought also to end the program, I'm trying to just think of all the happy moments. I thought about all my favorite Yankees moments. And there's far too many to name. Far too many. But I think about like the ones, if you were to sit alone, quietly, in a room for just a few minutes, and you had to list the most memorable baseball games of your life, what would you remember? What would you think about? What would those moments be? The ones that really captured you and captured your heart. And so I figured I just started listing them. I just started saying, these are the ones that I remember the most. And there's a billion more, but these are the ones I remember the most. I remember going to my first ever Yankee game. My dad took me. He took me with the people I most admired in my childhood, my neighbors from across the street, who were probably about 8 years older than me, and the two coolest guys I ever knew, They were two Italians, just like Fonzie on Happy Days. And they were as cool as Fonzie on Happy Days. They had a car. They didn't have a motorcycle. They had a car. They always seemed to have girlfriends. And like when you're a little kid growing up and you see like Fonzie on TV and then two twins, real live Fonzies across the street, you're just in awe. And for my first ever Yankee game, my dad didn't just take me, he took the twins. And their favorite player, I've told this before, was Roy White. And my favorite player was Greg Nettles. And they each homered that game. The Yankees played the Oakland A's. I believe it was May 17th, 1977, but it may have been May 7th, but I think it was May 17th, 1977. Nettles homered, Roy White homered, Mickey Rivers might have homered in that game. Don Gullett pitched. I remember my dad saw Vita Blue on the A's and he had an earring and he was like, wow, I don't know if he'd ever really seen a baseball player with an earring before, but just going to the game, getting my first Yankees pennant, getting my first Yankees yearbook. And by the way, and we've talked about this before, but that 1977 Yankees yearbook just did not stay together. The moment you put it in your hands, it basically crumbled. It was made very poorly. But I remember being a kid, being all upset, like, I now have something special, the Yankee yearbook, and the pages fell out and it got ripped easily. And I thought, my goodness, I can't even care for this thing that I'm trying so hard to care for. But I know a lot of people over the years have said the same thing about that version of the Yankees yearbook. It just crumbles. But anyway, of course, I remember Reggie hitting those big home runs in the World Series. And I've told that story before. That was the first time that water ever came out of my eyes in happiness when the Yankees won that World Series. At that point, I was hooked for life. I'd never before cried tears of happiness. I didn't even know there was such a thing. I remember, we're only doing happy thoughts, so we're not going to talk about Thurman Munson, but I remember watching Don Mattingly on UHF. Now, you have to be older to know that the TV used to have the VHF channels and the UHF channels. This was before cable. And sometimes if you got it just right, you could find a channel on UHF, oftentimes in Spanish. But you could find different channels than just channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13, which is what you get in the New York area on over-the-air antenna TV. Sometimes you could get some, and I remember watching on UHF some Winter League baseball from, Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic or wherever. I don't remember where it actually was, or maybe it might have been all the island nations. Who knows? But I remember Don Mattingly played in that league that year. And I remember being so excited when I could find a game and see Don Mattingly before he became Don Mattingly playing in the winter leagues. I remember Jeter's opening day when he made that catch over the shoulder. I was a teacher and we didn't have TVs in our classroom, but they had one in the library in the back room with cable. And on a free period, or I think during my lunch or something, I was able to catch that part of the game and also see his home run. I remember Bernie Williams going to a Yankee game and somebody saying, this guy's a bum. This is before he became great and he's never going to amount to anything. The Yankees think he's going to be a superstar. And I remember Bernie hitting a big home run in that game. It might've been a walk-off. I don't recall 100%, but that was exciting. Joe Girardi's big triple in game 6 of the 1996 World Series. I was at that game with my dad. The ticket's actually behind me on the shelf somewhere. But that was so cool because the Yankees won the World Series that night. I remember Girardi's triple being a highlight. And I remember Matsui hitting a walk-off. Ethan, my son's favorite baseball player, hitting a big walk-off in the last game we know we'd ever be at Yankee Stadium while Matsui was a Yankee. Those are just some of the great moments. My dear friends, listen, make the most of every day. Tell the people who you're with, who you love, that you love them. Spend your time with them. Look for the good. Make each day the best it can be. Thanks for spending the last half hour with me. Have a great day, and hopefully next week I'm back here with David Ostrowski, and we can talk about Roberto Alomar and his career. Have a great day.